So first, I'll let you introduce yourself and say a bit about who you are.
So my name's Frances. I'm 25. I'm a student at university. I'm currently finishing a master's degree in ancient Greek. I'm from New Zealand. Sorry for the accent.
Love the accent.
And I'm asexual.
So today's topic is asexuality. So first, I just want to define what sexual orientation is before we start, because asexuality is a sexual orientation. So sexual orientation is a term used to describe your pattern of emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction. So now I'll let you define what asexuality means and what it is.
So it's asexuality is a sexual orientation, and it's basically the lack of sexual attraction. So just like you can be attracted to one gender or multiple genders or all genders, you can also be attracted to nobody. That's what asexuality is.
Exactly. So it's important to note that asexuality does not equal celibacy or abstinence, because it's not a choice. It's sexual. Just like, being gay isn't, you don't go like, oh, can you please stop being gay and just be straight for a bit? Like, it's not something you decide. So it's just that you don't feel sexual attraction, right? You don't. Do you understand what it is?
Well, yes, having done a lot of research on it, I kind of, for a long time I didn't understand what it was, and I assumed that I felt it because it's the default in our society. Everyone assumes that everyone experiences sexual attraction. And then I eventually started thinking about it and researched it and realised, wait, what on earth is this thing? I don't feel that.
Like, I cannot relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I guess I can't relate, so but you know what I mean, like. So now, do you want to just mention what romantic and being, like, aromantic means?
Yeah.
Maybe.
So, asexuality refers to your sexual orientation, that is sexual attraction, the desire to have sexual contact with a person. But I think most people understand that does not necessarily mean the same as being in love with a person. You can want to have sexual contact with a person but not actually be in love with them, or vice versa, be in love with someone but not be sexually attracted to him. So because of that, the asexual community uses something which is called the split attraction model, that is splitting these attractions into romantic orientation and sexual orientation. Because for a lot of asexuals they don't line up. Most asexuals have a romantic orientation, so they might be asexual and straight or asexual and gay and so on. You can also be aromantic, which means you do not experience romantic attraction. That's me. So I'm both. You can be asexual and aromantic, or you can be just asexual and another orientation, or you can also be just aromantic and a sexual orientation next to that.
But does aromantic mean you don't want hugs and you don't want any form of physical contact?
It has nothing to do with that. In fact, if you're referring to hugs and non-sexual contact, that's something that we call sensual attraction. So that's also part of the split attraction model. That is that there's kinds of attractions that are not sexual and not romantic. And the main ones that are discussed in the asexual and aromantic communities are aesthetic attraction, sensual attraction, and platonic attraction. So aesthetic attraction is finding someone really good looking, just thinking, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's not because they're good looking that you necessarily want to have sex with them or want to have anything with them, right?
Exactly, just recognise that as an aesthetically very pleasing person.
Of course, yeah.
And then sensual attraction is wanting to have, physical contact with a person, wanting to hug them, wanting to, touch them in all sorts of ways.
So that's not linked to romance, right?
Exactly, it's not linked to romance. You can want to hug someone and have physical contact with them and not be romantically or sexually attracted to them.
That reminds me of when... So, like, I'm usually in open relationships anyway, that's not the point, but I just remember definitely, like, as in my life in general, when I've met, like, different people, sometimes I've been, wanting to, like, maybe make out with that person, but I didn't want to have sex with them or be in a relationship with them. But yeah, I still wanted to, like, kiss them and have maybe, like, a physical, like, proximity, but that wasn't sex and that wasn't a relationship. So there's, like, an infinity of, like, attraction, like, of different attractions. And actually, when I researched, like, different types of attractions, there were so many. There were literally like so many different, like, kind of attractions. Yeah.
And the third one that I mentioned is platonic attraction, which is a very important one to me. It's something that I experience quite a bit, and that's, finding someone really, really cool, wanting to be friends with them or to have a close platonic relationship with them. So it could range from anything from just being casual friends to being best friends, but basically it's being drawn to someone in a platonic way, thinking this person's so cool, I want to hang out with them, and being all kind of starry-eyed about a person, but totally platonically.
So is there a difference between your friends and other people, like, where, well, I mean, I guess it's not romance, but other people where you have a different kind of attraction to them, or would you just call it all these people your friends?
Well, I would call them all my friends, but I think for a start, friendship varies so much, you know, no two friends are the same, no two friendships are the same, but I would say my feelings towards certain friends are different because I feel a stronger connection with some of them.
Would you say that you love them? Like, could you
absolutely
say, could you make a difference between the emotion you feel towards friendship and when you're in love with someone?
Well, in love, because I mean, I don't fall in love romantically.
Yeah.
But in friendship love, I mean, it's a bit of a strange expression, but there is a difference to me. It's kind of like there's friendship, and then there's kind of friendship 2.0 or friendship plus, which feels just so much more intense.
Friendship plus, I love that. That's so cool. Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, so what are the things that people ask you when they know nothing about asexuality, and you're literally like, please don't, like, what makes you uncomfortable, like, that people, because I'm like, obviously, like, this is super, like, not, like, represented, like, often, like, people never speak about this, so I'm sure when you do talk about the fact that you're asexual, or people just, like, ask you, or you just, like, you know, you're, like, in a group of people talking about sex and you're just, like, can't relate, I'm sure sometimes people are like, oh my god, like, what, and they ask you, like, questions, and so what are maybe the things that you wouldn't recommend asking an asexual person?
I'd say the two big ones. The first one is asking about any kind of my sexual history, and, you know, have I had sex before with people, and especially the one that I really hate is, do you masturbate? I think that's highly inappropriate to ask, because that if you wouldn't ask that of any other person, why is it appropriate to ask an asexual that just out of the blue? As
in, like, if someone wanted to ask that to you, like, as in your close friends, and we're just talking masturbation, and then they ask you, like, that's fine, but it's like, it's not like as a reaction to you saying that you're asexual.
Exactly.
It's inappropriate, right?
Exactly. Like, people say, you know, I say I'm asexual, and people go, oh, but do you masturbate?
Yeah, as if like they've, like, realized the truth and the answer to the world. And also, like you just said, what was the first thing you said that they would ask? Your
my
history.
Sexual history. Like, have you had sex? Are you sure?
Yeah, and
maybe you just haven't met the right person yet, and things like
that's
that.
linked to people thinking that, like, it's maybe, like, because of a trauma, which I'm not saying it never is. Like, as we spoke about this together as well, that, like, you're allowed to identify as asexual, and that could, like, come from a trauma, but you can't, like, assume that every asexual person has had a trauma and that's why they're asexual. That's the same with people that are gay. Like, probably some people that are gay have had, like, a bad experience, and maybe that's why they're gay, but also some people are just gay. So you wouldn't go up and be like, well, yeah, like, and, you know, that's a big thing that also happened to gay people, that people try to, like, fix them and tell them go see a psychologist, and, like, oh, you just haven't, like, tried it with the, like, right women. And that's the same as, like, you're talking about, where people are like, well, maybe you just haven't had, like, the right experience yet, and you're just, like, traumatized, or you're just, like, scared, and you just need to try it, which is super harmful, because then it can, like, result in rape as well, because it means that people are trying to, like, change you and be like, oh, you just need to try, like, the, like, this amazing thing that sex is, and you're just like, I actually don't really want to. Anything else that people shouldn't ask?
I'd say that, well, the trauma one is a really big one. It's, I have had that asked of me as well, like, oh, but I had someone ask me, and it was a therapist actually, ask me, you know, oh, do you think your asexuality is due to trauma? And I said no, and she insisted and kept saying, you know, what about not even a little trauma in your childhood? Like, basically, not even one tiny little trauma. Don't be so desperate for me to be sexually traumatized.
Yeah, that's so bad, man. Yeah, and then again, like, it's cool because, like we just said, it's also super inclusive, because, like, there's different reasons, well, and sometimes none, like, for people to be, like, asexual, and, like, for a certain amount of time I actually identified, like, as an asexual myself, and then I realized that, like, I guess I wasn't, but as in, like, during that time, no one was gonna be like, well, like, you can't identify as asexual, and, like, I actually was at that time, like, as in, it was a period in my life where I had no interest for sex, and, like, it was really, like, cool to see that was a thing, and that I could be part of it. And so I asked Frances, like, are you, like, shocked if I identified as asexual? And then was like, oh, actually I'm not. And then she said that it was fine.
Yeah, well, I think it's fine. I think most of the asexuality community agrees, in that, you know, we know what it's like for people to say, oh, that's not possible, your experiences are not true, etc. So as a result of that, we tend to be an extremely inclusive community. If people identify with this community, find a place in it, then they're welcome. Then if they later on find out that actually they were wrong and they weren't actually asexual after all, they had, you know, some other thing going on, that's fine. You know, we hope that at least we could be helpful for a while, just so long as the people who leave the community don't perpetuate the stereotypes, because maybe they were confused and so they start saying, oh, all asexuals are confused.
Yeah, of course. It's not because then I changed it, I'm like, well, wait a minute, like every asexual person's obviously going to change their mind and like be like me. Like I completely like acknowledge that some people are asexual and are going to be like for their whole life, and that's fine as well. But you also said to me that it's the same thing with like gay people sometimes, or heterosexual people who like some people like identify as bi and then identify later on as gay, which is absolutely fine. Once again, there's nothing there's no reason to shame people for that. So like asexuality is like super like not represented like in society, and it's a difficult sexual orientation. Well, it's not difficult to be asexual, but I mean it is, because even the LGBT community like rejects like asexual people. I mean, have you ever been openly like discriminated by anyone who's part of the LGBT community?
I don't think I've openly been discriminated by someone in the LGBT community, and honestly the LGBT community has become a lot more accepting lately. A couple 2-3 years ago, this was a big debate within the LGBT plus community, and you know, should asexuals be part of it or not, and it, you know, really degenerated into a lot of bullying and things like that on both sides. But in real life spaces, I've never really been discriminated against. I have felt self-conscious, especially because a lot of resources in the LGBT community, but also in you know, in the world in general, aren't geared towards asexuals. Like I was at an LGBT plus centre in town a while ago, and they had little booklets about sexual orientation. They said, you know, they presented all the sexual orientations and asexuality wasn't in it, and I felt, you know, where am I?
yeah, of course. And the amount of times that I see LGBT Q plus or like QI plus, and I'm like, where's the A? Like, if you actually want to be like correct, like you should include all of it if you're trying to be inclusive. And I understand that people sometimes write it short and just write LGBT, but then if you are going forwards with writing like all of it, then you need to like add the A. And that's the thing, like a lot of people don't, because again they like kind of like disagree. They're just like, well, it's not a sexual orientation, but I mean it very much is. And again, it's like a sexual minority, and it's not minority, by which I mean like the basic thing to be is heterosexual, right? But anything that differs from that and doesn't fit into the like conformist like society's like ideas, like kind of fits in the LGBT community, because that's the whole point, is to like help people that are like in a minority and like make them feel like they're valid and that they exist and that it's fine, and accept them, you know. So I read a few things, and I've got like a hair in my mouth. So like part of people, like some people that like discriminate like asexual people, again, like this is within like the LGBT community, is because like they're like part of the sex positive movement, which is a movement that's about like destigmatizing like sex and making it something like positive instead of negative. Like, I'm sure you've all heard like this whole thing of like, oh my god, like it's not only towards women, but you know, women who have a lot of sex like sometimes get criticized and things like this, but it's like the danger is to go overboard like the other way around, and then kind of being like, well, if you're a virgin or if you just like don't want sex, then something's wrong with you, and that's because like you've been taught that sex is bad, and like religion influenced you, and like everyone around you influenced you, and that's the only reason why you don't want to have sex. Like people do mention that it's okay not to have sex, but it's not often mentioned that it's okay not to want sex. And I think that's like the big difference, is that like yeah, people do say like you need to make sure that you're consenting, and like you should only have sex if you like, you know, feel like it and everything, but like it's almost never mentioned that you're allowed to just not want sex ever in your life, right? And I remember when I was younger, actually, I used to be like disgusted by sex, and how old was I can't remember how old I was, but I remember that someone said to me like, it'll change, but like they were literally like, oh, like that's kind of cute that you're like repulsed by sex, like it'll change, like 100% it's gonna change, like and I was like, no, it's not gonna change, and it's crazy that person was like, I assure you it will, because it's that thing of like, well, that's literally them telling me that if it doesn't change, then I'm like not normal.
Yeah.
When they could have literally been like, well, yeah, maybe, like maybe you're never gonna want to, and maybe you are, so you can still be sex positive, and talk about consent and about sex as something that's not shameful and something that's like, you know, great and fun, and destigmatize it, but you can still then talk about the fact that some people just never want to have sex, and that's also fine. So yeah, I think it's important to like say both. I think that was mostly what I wanted to say. Yes, and yeah, as we spoke about like before, like the dangers as well that asexual people might like encounter is that people wanna, you know, like, it's like they want to like convert them, so it's kind of like that happens also with like gay people, when someone's like, I'm gonna like change you and I'm gonna convert you, like that's super harmful, and so asexual people are like, you know, like it's a bit dangerous because corrective like rape like might happen where someone is like trying to like fix them, and again like seeing doctors and therapists and being like, you just need to see someone and have the experience to then like feel sexual, when actually just tell them it's fine if they don't want to have sex, like. And yeah, it's true that it's not often mentioned, and I definitely thought like for the little amount of time that I identified as asexual, I remember like before like identifying as so, I was like, oh my god, like I'm not normal because I just don't really want to have sex with anyone, and I was like, this is like wrong because it's shown everywhere, and it's like prone. Then again, like it's great, like there's nothing wrong with being super sexual or even hypersexual, but as long as you give the option to other people to just not want sex or whatever. So how, like, what do you do if people start speaking about sex like around you? Like, does it make you uncomfortable? Do you want them to stop? Like, what do you do?
Well, I'm okay with it, you know, at a superficial level. Also because actually due to the fact that you know, it's viewed as bad to not have an interest in sex and to not want to do it and all that, I internalised that for a very long time, and so for a few years I actually forced myself to be more comfortable with it and to read up on stuff about it, also because at the time I was assuming that eventually I would be interested in it, so I was doing research for like, when I would be
that
interested.
That day's gonna come.
And so I actually forced myself to read all sorts of things and to write things as well, and to make myself comfortable with the idea of sex. So I'm more comfortable than I was at the time, but it's still not something that I'm naturally very, very comfortable with. So if people are talking about it around me, you know, I'm fine with that. Like, you know, talk about it so long as they don't go into too much detail, because I really don't want to know the exact details of what people do.
That's fair enough.
And so long as, you know, sometimes it can be a bit awkward in situations where everybody's talking about sex and they're like, what about you? You know?
You're like, I don't actually give a shit about sex.
Exactly. I've had conversations like one time in a group where everyone was talking about, you know, oh my god, I couldn't go without sex for 6 months or whatever, and they were all going around the table and saying, you know, oh no, 6 months is okay for me, but whatever. And I was just kind of sitting there, and at the time I didn't even know I was asexual, so I was just sitting there feeling really awkward, like, why do I not care? And it was just a very awkward situation, so, you know, just didn't say anything, but it made me feel very uncomfortable, also in part just because I didn't know why I felt uncomfortable, but I do feel out of place in that kind of conversation sometimes. But just people talking about sex, you know, I'm very sex positive in the sense, you know, if you want to have sex, do it, you know, and if you want to talk about it, sure, I'm not going to stop you, it's not my, you know, role to stop you, but
and that's why that's why
too many details just because of how I am.
That's why I think it's like it's unfair. Like, I've actually, like, to me, you're super sex positive. Like, I've never felt like when I've spoken about my sexual experiences to you or mentioned them like around you, I've never felt like you were judging me, or that you were like, ooh, like she likes sex. Like, you understand that, like, that's what I mean. That's what sex positive means, is that like you're still supporting me being a sexual being whilst not like experiencing sexual attraction, and I can do the same thing. I can still be like a sexual person and love sex, but also understand that some people don't want to have sex and don't care about sex without trying to change them. And yes, I also wanted to mention the difference between libido and sexual attraction, because that's also kind of like a misconception where people are like, oh, like an asexual person is like a person that like just doesn't have a libido, but you explained to me the difference.
Yeah, so I mean, again, as I told you, I'm not really an expert on the difference, but as far as I'm aware, a libido is basically a biological feeling. It's a biological state where your body basically, it's like hunger. Your body's like, I need this thing right now, and the thing that it wants is sexual contact. And that can be partnered or it can be solo as well, so masturbation, for example. And that's, it's purely a body physical thing, whereas attraction is finding a person in particular hot or good looking or whatever and wanting to have sexual contact with them specifically.
Sexual attraction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can experience no sexual attraction, but your body can still sometimes be like, oh, I want sexual contact now.
And then therefore
with nobody
you
specifically.
would masturbate, and it's just like of course. And I'm sure like most people have also experienced that. Like even if you also experience sexual attraction, sometimes you are just like randomly horny. Like it does happen. Like
and you can also be attracted to someone without actually having a libido at the same time. So you can think, exactly. That person's really good looking and hot, and I would do them, but I have no libido right now.
Yeah,
so I won't.
I would do them, but not right now. yeah, of course. Yeah, and also obviously it depends on what the other person wants, because you might like be sexually attracted to someone and be like, I would do them, but like for me, if they're not consenting, then that's a massive turn off. Like for instance, so the circumstance like definitely affects like how you're gonna like behave and everything. Is there anything else you want to say?
May I ask you one question?
Yes, of course.
Since you mentioned that, what do you think about, as a non-asexual person, about being in a relationship with an asexual person? Would you consider that, and how do you think that would be navigated from the perspective of a person who is not asexual?
Ooh. Okay, then I also have a question for you after that.
Okay.
I don't... So, like, I think I need physical proximity. So, like, if I don't think I could be with someone that wouldn't want, like physical, like, hugs and, like, things like that. But then again, that's quite a small amount of, like, people. Or, I mean, I'm sure there are people out there.
I don't know exactly what percentage, but
so
some asexuals are like that, some aren't.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think I would struggle to be with someone that doesn't want any form of physical touch. But, you know what I mean? Like, if someone... I don't really know. I don't know. Like, Again, like I feel like I want sex, but then usually I want it because I know that other person wants it too. So I guess it would massively change the way I want sex as well, being with someone that doesn't want it.
No,
like
there are asexuals who do have sex.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, in the context of a relationship, if one of the partners is not asexual and the other one is, they can agree still to have sex for example, for physical proximity. If the asexual person views sex as just another way of being physically close to their partner, like hugging or as something romantic or whatever, then they may be willing to have sex. So not all asexuals do not want to have sex ever. Some are willing to have it and may even enjoy it.
Okay.
So
they would have sex but still without sexual attraction.
Yeah. But they could enjoy it, so it's not that they're just lying here and they're like, oh, I hate this, I can't wait till it's over.
Yeah, it's not rape.
Exactly. It's because they would be fully consenting, they would just not be attracted to their partner.
Oh, so interesting. I don't think I can actually like understand or like remotely like see. Yeah, and
that's why I asked the question, because it's really interesting.
Yeah.
How important is sexual attraction in a relationship? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I mean, like, during that time where I identified as asexual, I was like, I'm never gonna have, well, I mean, that's something I considered, literally, I was like, I'm never gonna have sex again, like, ever, and it wasn't just, like, out of, like, one, like, bad experience or whatever, like, it wasn't me being like, I'm never gonna have sex again, but literally, I was like, actually, you know what, like, I just don't need to, and I was literally, like, I'll still be in relationships, but just, like, not like, have sex and everything, but as I said, like, the aspect of, like, hugging and, like, spooning and things like that were always, like still like need to be there for me, but yeah, okay, I think anything else?
You said you had a question?
My question was if you would have sex with someone in a relationship even though you're asexual, would you?
Well, I'm also aromantic, so I wouldn't be in a relationship from the
That's
start.
True. There you go. But
I have considered it.
It's interesting that word, like relationship, like it's kind of like unfair that you need to say you wouldn't be in a relationship, because I mean every relationships, like your friendships are relationships, but because people assume that relationship is like a romantic relationship, you're like, I'm not gonna be in a relationship, but then again you probably like would be in some form of relationship, just like there's no word for it like right now, for you to like
friendship or
yeah or whatever you like it is to you, so I guess you wouldn't.
Well, no, from the start I wouldn't be in a romantic relationship. But if I was, especially when I thought that I was asexual but not aromantic, at that time I still thought I would end up in a romantic relationship, and I thought I would potentially be willing to compromise and to have sex with my partner, but it was always very much, I was very unsure about it. I was like, well, I'm willing to consider it maybe at some point in the future. It was never like, sure, I'll do that. Yeah. You weren't like, that's absolutely fine, fair enough. And then I guess again, like
I guess it can change as well with time and
Mm-hmm.
at different moments and stuff. Like again, like it's a spectrum as well. So like some asexual people will have like you said will have sex sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah, there's a lot of variety, and and I think in my case the reason why I decided in the end, well actually it's not something that I want at all, is because that was at the point when I discovered asexuality and I discovered aromanticism, and then I realised that actually it's not an obligation. And until that point, I'd been willing to compromise on sex because I'd been told it was something that everybody had to do. But then once I discovered the community, at first I was still thinking, oh yeah, but I'll still do it because I'm normal. I may be asexual, but I'm still willing to do it.
it's like wanting to be accepted.
But once I really started being engaged with the community and meeting other people and talking to them and everything, I realised, hey, actually it's not an obligation. I can decide that I don't want to do it. And so from that point on, I've started thinking I can set down these boundaries and say, well, I don't want to, but then for other people their boundaries are different and they might be absolutely willing to have sex or to have a romantic relationship if they're aromantic as well. So
which is just like it's narrowing it down, but that's the same again with being gay. Like when you're gay, well, I mean, is you're already narrowing like the population down because you're only attracted to like one gender. So that's the same. Like I guess you, like for people that are like asexual and romantic, I guess they'll just like have to be with someone that is, I guess, like the same or that would like accept not to have sex and everything. Have you been to like how do you feel about kissing actually?
That's a really good question. Well, out of all the romantic activities and sexual activities, kissing was the one that I wanted to try the most.
Okay.
Because again, like sex, it's considered a bit of a rite of passage, a milestone when you're growing up. It's like, I had my first kiss. It's
so true, it is.
And so I wanted to grow
and like
up
having
and
your
have
first
that
time
experience.
as well, which is again like you're allowed to just never have a first time. Like what?
Yeah. So I wanted to have that experience in great part just because I wanted to be, all grown up and be able to say I did it, and also just out of curiosity to know how it feels, and then I did it. And it was extremely boring.
I guess with no attraction, you're probably just like, what is it was I don't know.
It was extraordinarily boring. It just felt like two faces mushing together. And maybe it would be different. I've always told myself maybe it would be different if I did it with somebody that I really cared about, because I didn't really deeply care about the people that I did it with. But I also wondered if that might be some kind of just internalizing and thinking, I just haven't met the right person yet.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But so it is the one activity that I'm still kind of willing to consider to do. So I'm not like totally opposed to it, and I would try it, I would do it, but
only if you felt like you wanted to.
Yeah, and also now I've done it, and I'm like, well, okay, cool, I've done it.
I've done it. I don't
need
care.
to do it again.
Fair enough. Right. Okay. Well, I think that's it. I think we've like said a lot of things, and I hope that was like educational for you. Do you have any questions for Frances? Oh, people call some relationships queer platonic relationship. I think. Yes.
Yeah, so a queer platonic relationship is basically a platonic relationship, so it's not based in romantic or sexual attraction, but it's a relationship that goes beyond what is traditionally considered to be acceptable in a friendship. So for example, I'd say I'm kind of in one of those at the moment. It's not explicitly a queer platonic relationship, and we haven't agreed to call it that way, but it kind of fits the definition of a friendship that's, very intense, a lot of affection expressed in it, and queer platonic relationships can also include levels of commitment that usually friendships don't have. People might agree to, live together permanently and raise children together, that sort of thing. But it's ultimately based in friendship feelings, so hence the term queer platonic. So it's platonic, but it queers the understanding of platonic, basically. Yeah, and that's something that a lot of aromantic people especially are very interested in.
Cool. Thank you. Here we go. We didn't have any more questions, so I think that's it. Well, thank you so much for coming and for talking about this. I think it's super interesting to educate ourselves about it, and once again tell people around us that it's okay if they don't want to have sex and don't question, you know what I mean. I feel like I probably have done that too, to people without even realizing it, that maybe someone was talking about just not really caring about sex, and I was like, oh, but you just haven't done it right, or haven't had you'll see it's amazing. It's not because it's amazing to you and that you want it that everyone does. So again, it's important for people if you have kids in the future growing up to just acknowledge that some people don't want to have sex ever, and don't feel sexual like attraction, and again, like you can be sex positive and still support like asexuality. So yeah, something interesting to know and to raise awareness about and talk about to other people, to make sure these people are also represented and not like ignored, and that they still feel like they exist. So yeah, thank you so much for watching and for coming to see the live video. Bye to everyone who's on the live, and bye to everyone that's rewatching it.